Hi everyone, this video is made for relaxing and sleeping to the sounds of rain and scary stories. I wish you all a pleasant viewing. I'm a contract worker for a secret corporation that hunts supernatural creatures. June. The past few days I've moved through life like a zombie. I finished a handful of easy jobs, well aware of what other contract workers whispered to each other when they assumed I wasn't looking. August and April were busy with other tasks, so I had no one willing to work with me. At least the jobs were mostly harmless. Dr. Philo rewrapped my bad leg, warning how it should be replaced soon. He poked around asking about my personal life. I gave him one-word answers, feeling far too exhausted to get into details. Out of the blue, August called asking if I could go over to his place. He said he wanted to go on a short trip with me and that I should wear warm clothing. I should have refused so he wouldn't have to deal with my bad mood. He threatened to drag me out of my bed if I didn't come over. Since I didn't have much of a choice, I got dressed, feeling slightly lightheaded. He took one look at me and decided to make breakfast. I had been showering, so I didn't think I looked as bad as I felt. He forced me to sit at the kitchen table while he fried some eggs. August learned how to make some very simple dishes. He set the plate in front of me and then got started putting together some lunch. I could only have a few bites of eggs with toast before my stomach started to hurt. I rested my head on the table, wanting to just roll over and die. "What's gotten you so moody?" August finally asked. "I got dumped," I said, realizing he was the first person I told. He stopped working and wiped his hands on a tablecloth. He walked over behind my chair to lean down, hugging my shoulders. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said, sounding like a father comforting a heartbroken teenage daughter. I barely made an effort to shrug him away. I knew he wanted to make me feel better, but it didn't help. I felt him press his face against the side of my head, making slurping sounds. "What are you doing?" I asked, too tired to push him away. "Eating your brains," he answered, pausing in his efforts. Not much in here." I finally pushed him aside. He laughed at his own joke and then got a cup of coffee. He set it in front of me and got back to work on making lunches. "Ito is an agent. He could die at any moment while working. He must have broken it off between you two before you got too attached," August said as I nodded along. I understood that. The facts didn't stop me from being depressed. I knew in the long run it would be better for both of us. "Did you have a partner that passed away?" August commented over his shoulder. My stomach tightened. I didn't like talking about her or what happened. The fact I worked with someone else 2 years ago wasn't hard information to find, even though I rarely talked about it. "I heard you were injured, but you took time off because of her death was hard on you. How would you react if something happened to Ito? You're hurting now, but it was his choice to not cause more pain in the future. I'm aware of that. It's just," I started to speak and paused to take a sip of coffee. "No, it wasn't coffee. I don't know what it was. A taste I couldn't describe hit me like a truck as I saw a swirl of strange colors. I coughed, spitting out the foul liquid. "I don't know how to make coffee," August admitted with a smile that looked more like a grimace. He reminded me of a dog that had been caught doing something it shouldn't. He went to dump the mug, but I told him to save it and give it to the corporation as some sort of biological weapon. I realized it'll be painful to lose him. "I think it would be worth it though," I said after I recovered. Whatever he put in that mug cleared my brain enough to collect my thoughts for the first time in a while. "You might be strong enough, but is Ito? Are you going to force him into something he's not emotionally ready for?" he pointed out. I leaned back in my chair, feeling so stupid I didn't consider that. With a long sigh, I scrubbed my face against my palms in frustration. August finished putting our lunches together and handed over a bag of food. He was ready to go and wanted to be done dealing with my personal life. "You should send him a message clearly explaining your feelings, that you can handle the pain of losing him in exchange for time together. However, you need to make it clear you'll accept the fact he may not be able to do the same. The worst thing you can do is pressure him into something he doesn't want to make you happy. This might be Ito's first relationship. So far, I think you two are doing just fine." It felt like a fog temporarily cleared from my mind. I'd been moping around for so long it kept me from actually thinking properly. "You're a good dad," I said to him. We stopped by the door to get our jackets on. August paused as if I had said something wrong. "Speaking of which, where is Lucas?" I asked, looking for a pair of small shoes near the door. He's with his relatives today. He refused to elaborate. I decided to not press the matter. I'd been too focused on my own issues. I hadn't been paying attention to his. He hadn't told me much about what was going on with him and Lucas. As far as I knew, he still had him on the weekends and had been working hard on changing that. I suddenly felt like a bad friend. Sure, August would gladly eat me if I died, but at least he was willing to wait. I should really start treating him better. August created a doorway to a new location. It was cold but manageable. I stepped out into some light snow, tightening my jacket. I didn't bring gloves, which August noticed. He pulled out a pair and helped me put them on as his dad's reflexes kicked in. I let him but flinched when my bruised fingers bent. I knew Dr. Philo had access to magic bandages that healed faster, however the broken bones recovered sooner than I expected. We need to get up the side of the mountain. You'll be too slow. I need to carry you, he explained. I frowned, glancing around to look for any witnesses. We were on a slight snowy slope with patches of trees. In front of us was a sparking mountain with the wind starting to pick up. He was right. I would never be able to walk up there without help. He got on one knee so I could climb on his back. August easily took off, running through the snow or jumping between the trees. The cool breeze felt nice on my face. This place had pure clean air that was perfect for supernatural creatures. We had only been here for a short while, but August seemed to be recovering some of his internal magic source. As we moved, I saw glimpses of some buildings through the trees. Normally humans didn't live in magic-rich places like this. It attracted many dangerous creatures. I couldn't get a clear look at how many buildings there were in the distance, or what kind they were. It only took us 10 minutes to get halfway up the mountain. I found it slightly hard to breathe, but it was manageable. August wasn't wearing shoes, which helped him jump between small ledges. His clawed hands jabbed into the rocks, climbing as if he had done this 100 times before. We entered in a narrow opening to see a small cave glowing blue with an unknown light source. So far, August hadn't told me the reason why we were here. He went over to the back wall of the cave, placing a clawed hand on the smooth rock. Delicate odd symbols appeared across the rocks, creating an outline of a door. He nodded and walked forward, sinking into the stone. I followed behind, unsure of what to expect. I nearly walked off a small platform. A set of spiral stairs curved along the wall so far down I couldn't see the bottom. Along the walls were carved out holes in the rock covered with black fabric. Before I could ask what this place was, August picked me up so we could take the fastest way down. If I wasn't so shocked, I would have screamed. I swear we fell for a full 5 minutes. We slowed before hitting the ground and gently landed. August needed to hold me up because my knees refused to stop shaking. He smiled, amused with himself. When I could walk again, he brought me over to a black-covered shape. Carefully, he lifted the dusty fabric to show what was hidden away. The beauty of it took my breath away. A crystallized figure rested against the rock as if they had simply fallen asleep. They had the same claws and insect features August did. The long hair shimmered like silver spider webs. A set of 4 delicate dragonfly-like wings were tucked against their body. There was no internal magic source. This supernatural creature had passed away a long time ago. "This is my great-grandmother," August explained. I looked around, realizing that this place was filled with more bodies like this one. "I heard you're in debt." I turned my head back toward August, understanding why he would ask such a question, but still confused about why we came here. Bodies of powerful supernatural creatures were in high demand. Even after their internal magic gets used up, their flesh and bones can still be used in spells or formed into weapons. If August sold a pure body like this one, I could pay off my debt 10 times over. "This is your family. You shouldn't have even brought me here. What's going on?" He didn't show any signs of distress, no matter how hard I looked. "I have a dangerous job. If I die, I want to have someone I can trust with all this until April is ready. But if possible, I never want to burden her with this. His grave is only a rumor at the moment. If anyone found out it was real, you can imagine how much trouble it would cause the person protecting it." I looked around again, understanding his point. Most people would see these bodies as raw materials. The amount of sheer power that could be produced was hard to imagine. If one person used all of this for their gain, they might be able to take over the world 100 times over. People have killed for a fraction of this kind of magic. I'm the only one who can open the door. If I die without giving someone access here, it'll be sealed forever. Wouldn't the right be automatically passed to April? I wondered out loud. We don't share fathers. That made sense. I hadn't been thinking properly lately. They were half-siblings, but not once did he treat her any differently. Even though this grave belonged to his species, he loved his little sister so much he didn't want to burden her with it. Are you sure you trust me? I mean, I could turn around and sell even 10 of your dead family members and solve all my problems. I gestured around us. What do you think would happen if the corporation got a hold of even half of these bodies? He pressed. I stopped to think for a moment. It didn't take very long to figure out how terrible of an outcome that would be. They might be able to completely control a few worlds worth of supernatural creatures. I don't know how I feel about that. I hate how often agents die to protect humans. If they had this power, I know they would start killing off creatures that need to feed on humans to live. People like you would be slaughtered. They have always said they simply want to protect the balance between creatures and humans. But I feel like they love humans too much. It's complicated. I don't have the answers. I wouldn't be comfortable giving anyone access to any of this. Even with good intentions, it would just lead to problems. I've seen both sides suffer. People much smarter than myself had thought their entire lives about how monsters and humans could live together. From my experience, letting one side have power over the other did not solve anything. Have you talked to April about all of this? Wouldn't she be upset that you gave this responsibility to me? I asked him, wondering her opinion on all of this. She's always known about the graves, but she doesn't fully understand how much potential is sealed away here. I asked her what she would do with one body of a crystallized relative, and he trailed off for a second, as if reliving a traumatic event. April said she would eat it, get really big, and stomp through a city like Godzilla. Yeah, she couldn't be trusted with this. I held out my hand, showing him I was ready to accept the heavy burden of keeping this grave hidden. The process was simple. He cut part of his palm, then let the blood flow into my cupped hands. It fell into my skin, leaving no traces behind. It was a bit strange that August took me here out of the blue. There was something about him that felt a little bit off, but I couldn't figure out why. This was similar to a friend suddenly making a will. Of course, I would think something might be wrong. Since we were done, I needed to climb back onto his back so he could quickly get us up to the door. August was skilled at climbing even with the extra weight. Since I'd spent time with him on jobs he wasn't suited for, I didn't realize just how strong he could be. We still needed to get back down the mountain after leaving the tomb. The fastest way would be to create a door. August didn't mention any other reason why he wanted to come here, so I assumed he would head back home. Instead, he took a running start, jumping off the side of the ledge to get down the mountain the second fastest way. My stomach lifted into my throat as we started to free fall. For a second before the fear took over, I was able to take in the beauty of the area. The sparkling snow-covered slope dotted with trees made me realize why his family members wanted to fight to stay here. Even sturdy supernatural creatures would have been harmed falling from such a height. August knew what he was doing. He used his power to slow our fall before we hit the ground in such a gentle way that I didn't even notice the decrease in speed until we safely landed. It was a very impressive display of control that most people would not have been able to do. I still felt sick from the fall, and once his feet touched the ground, I climbed off his back and fell backwards into the snow. Our lunch bag landed next to me. I reached for it but gave up, laying with my arms sprawled out and eyes closed, embracing the cold on my back. I did think I was going to die when he jumped. My stomach had yet to settle, but for some odd reason, I felt more relaxed than I had for weeks. The pain in my bad leg felt so faint it might as well not be there. "Richie, are you all right?" August asked in a heavy tone. I didn't open my eyes and just nodded. "I don't do well with heights," I admitted. "That's not what I meant," he responded. Glancing up at him, I thought back to everything that had happened recently. It felt like I'd been rotting from the inside and just did my best to ignore it. Any time something happened, I risked falling apart. I realized that I felt like this since I lost my partner. I tried to pretend as if I was fine and attempted at a normal life. When that didn't work out, I went back to contract work that put me in danger. Broken bones, near-death experiences, and being scared to death felt right. If the person I cared about the most died because I was weak, why should I have a comfortable life? Was I alright? No. I've been working towards a slow suicide since I lost her. Yeah, I'm fine. I lied. What about you? It feels like something is going on you're not telling me about. I sat up and brushed the snow from my jacket. It warmed up a little since we got here. Still, I would kill for a hot coffee at that moment. Do you want to see the tree I was born under? We landed nearby. He said, refusing to answer my question. Without waiting, he started walking through the trees, heading towards a large pine standing near a clearing. He stopped in front of it to pat the bark. He looked like a person who just found an old childhood toy. It's a nice-looking tree. Can we get back to my question? I pressed after I caught up with him. My species lays an egg under the ground. When I hatched, I had to dig up through the roots. I didn't even have a human body for the first 10 years. He said, then paused for a moment, almost deep in thought. Richmond, I could tell you what has been bothering me, however you wouldn't understand it. I'm not the same as you. We stood a few feet from each other, a cold wind blowing between us. He was right. I would never fully understand what pain he's gone through. I'm human. He's not. Our lives are very different. But I could still support him if he was going through a hard time. Right now, he was acting like an older brother. He wanted to act like a bad guy to create distance between us so he wouldn't burden me with his issues. I didn't fully open up to him, so how could I be upset he refused so as well? Is this about Lucas? I asked, carefully, well aware that if I said the wrong thing at that moment, I would break our friendship. I thought he would just dodge any topics he didn't want to address. When his hands turned into claws and August darted forward ready to rip apart flesh, I was too stunned to react. Warm blood splashed against my back after the attack. Slowly I turned around to see a body bleeding out on the ground. More figures appeared in the trees. I was confused about how they got so close. I should have sensed a supernatural threat sooner. They all looked somewhat normal. They were dressed in warm clothing with heavy gloved and reflective goggles, while others simply wore sweaters. Any exposed skin was red from the cold, and some looked to hand frostbite starting at their fingertips. Each held a weapon that looked like just random objects they found. Some with knives, others with large sticks. They weren't a threat to August, but I would have trouble with these numbers. The crowd moved in a zombified state, and yet I couldn't see any traces of a spell controlling them. This was odd. I didn't understand what was going on. Another person darted forward in a weak attack. I easily stepped aside and then watched in horror when August swiftly sliced through the woman's neck. On reflex, I caught her trying to help, but she was dead within seconds. August. They're human, stop. I told him, frantic. We needed to think things through before acting. He was bound by a collar. If he killed humans without a good reason, the corporation would punish him. 2 days ago, all the humans at the ski lodge nearby disappeared. They assumed April or I were involved with whoever caused the trouble as revenge for our home being taken away. August explained, but refused to look in my direction. Richmond, leave. I'll take care of things here. I carefully placed the body of the poor woman we were unable to save on the ground. Her blood had seeped into my clothing and the cold air already started to freeze it. If I do that, they won't listen to anything I say. I know you're not working with the person behind all this. If you live through confronting the one who did this, then you'll be killed by the corporation, I sternly said. He moved again, far too quickly to stop. Another slash of his claws came down, killing an easy target. Fresh blood dripped from his fingers with his back facing me. That's the plan. His voice was steady, and it chilled me more than the wind. Like hell to that. You need to stay alive for Lucas. I scolded him as if he was a child. I was so focused on him I didn't notice someone heading my way with a knife in hand. August did. He lashed out, taking them down, but didn't stop there. I was unable to stop him from killing 3 more people. He paused to take a deep breath, his emotions finally breaking. Lucas won't be coming back home. He's human. I'm not. They decided his biological family would raise him. He sounded so defeated at that moment. No wonder he'd given up. He couldn't handle losing his family again. He assumed April hated him because he didn't fight for their home. He knew she would be fine without him and decided to die letting people assume it was for revenge. Sure, I had somewhat been acting the same way as him recently, but I refused to leave him to die here. Come on. I'm taking you home. I told him only to be ignored. He refused to listen, to just stay still. He simply kept digging his graves by killing others. I went to him, grabbing a hold of his arm and using all my strength to try to make him stop. He spun around, slamming his hand hard against a tree. We stood facing each other, specks of blood across his face half hidden by his wavy hair. Look at me, he demanded. I'm a monster. Accept that. I had a bad habit of turning a blind eye to difficult things to make my life easier. I knew August wasn't human. I didn't know if I accepted what that truly meant or didn't acknowledge his faults so we could become friends. Humans and monsters should not interact no matter how much we love each other. It only caused pain. Isn't that the reason why Ito dumped you? He was trying to be cruel so I would leave. The words still hurt. Are you just going to give up? Once you do, there's no turning back. I'm sure we'll figure something out. I'll admit my words sounded weak. A scowl came to his face as he started to snap. Oh, why didn't I think of that? I'll just try harder then. He hissed and turned to take his anger out on the half-frozen targets. It was sickening to watch him rip people to pieces, unable to do anything about it. Pent-up anger came out with sloppy attacks. His human mask becomes more monstrous with each passing second. I've already worked so damn hard and nothing I do matters. Humans take away everything I care about, and yet I still care about them. I can't have a family because I'm not like what I love no matter what I do. I can't change what I am. It's so damn frustrating. He paused to try and calm down, his chest heaving with heavy breaths. August gritted his teeth, holding down more rage that threatened to boil over. We both knew he was the best person to raise Lucas. But the higher-ups didn't see that. They only saw a monster around a defenseless human child and assumed his biological family would be better. They were the people who didn't look for Lucas when he went missing. They didn't care what happened to his parents. They only wanted him after they found out how much money he came with. August found the boy. He was Lucas' father the moment they saw each other. I looked away from him, trying to think of what I could do. August would be in deep trouble if anyone found out he slaughtered humans he could have easily run from. Should I lie and say I was the one who killed them? And then what? How could we get his son back after we deal with the issue at hand? My chest hurt seeing the gore on the ground he created. Then, something caught my eye, forcing me to focus on a cracked open skull. There was a glitter of magic. A small thread inside. It took some effort, but I saw more of those threads woven inside the heads of all the people around us. That was how they were being controlled. They may be alive, but the threads had made them brain-dead puppets. Killing them had been a mercy. Did August already know that? A skilled supernatural doctor would notice the threads if they knew to look. So, August was in the clear. I don't have the answers for you. But I'm not leaving you to die. Mostly because it might be too late now. I told August as I tensed up waiting for the next threat to arrive. Unlike the human puppets around us, I sensed a new person heading our way. His power looked and felt the same as the magic that ran through the mountain. Even at a distance, I knew this threat was strong. Much stronger than August. He was on his home turf, but he hadn't had much time to recover since we arrived here. You humans always cause so much trouble. August muttered almost to himself and turned toward the newcomer. Don't you agree, June? A person walked through the trees, stopping to admire the scene. He was tall and thin, wearing ripped, bloody clothing he'd stolen from a previous victim. The left side of his face had been completely scarred over. His long, wavy, dark hair reached down to his waist, swaying in the cool breeze. His skin appeared stretched over an oddly shaped skeletal structure aside from his left arm. It was completely transformed into a shiny black clawed hand with joints similar to a doll. Clearly, he had been a survivor of the attack that wiped out his entire village. He waited until he was strong enough to take back the mountain, but also to lure in August. I doubted June would be on friendly terms with his surviving family members after they sided with humans. You were kind to me when we were younger. I won't kill you right away. I'll give you a few moments with your little vermin. June said. His voice was deep and damaged. I stood firm, getting ready for what we would need to deal with. Glancing between June and August, I knew we were in a bit of trouble. The best course of action was to run and get help if that was even possible. Your internal magic is low. His isn't. From the looks of things, he has 3 times as much magic as you. I explained as if August didn't already know all that. I shuffled closer to him, watching June, expecting him to attack at any moment. You have good senses. It might help us out. I'll create a door. Hold him off, and you can open the connection to get away when you see an opening. We were nearly touching shoulders. I carefully looked around, trying not to be noticed. At some point, June had taken control of the magic flowing through the ground and trees around us. That sucked. It blocked us off from creating a doorway out. He's blocked us. No doors, we're stuck. I whispered, trying not to be overheard. How do you know that? August raised an eyebrow. I can see it. I answered, and a longer silence came between us than I expected. August stared at me as if I was crazy. Couldn't all supernatural creatures see magic? It suddenly dawned on me that my eyesight was better than most. If every creature could see exactly what they were dealing with, and how much power each other held, the world would be much different. Sure, I realized I had a useful skill, but clearly seeing what kind of threat we faced didn't solve our problem. The monster in front of us was still going to rip us apart. He only hadn't just to amuse himself. Are you two finished chatting? June's voice made us tense up. We did not have a plan. I've lived through bigger threats before. Maybe I would figure something out in the next few seconds. Cracks appeared in June's flesh. His chest puffed out as cracking sounds echoed around it. His body started to become deformed. With an awful ripping sound, the flesh covering his ribcage split open, revealing a large vertical mouth with dripping teeth. He kept pulling power out of the ground. Small glittering cracks formed across his face. He grew larger, hunching over, appearing more like a beast than a human. The foul magic coming off of him made my stomach churn. Simply being nearby made my legs tremble. Pure hatred fueled him so intensely that I didn't know how he was keeping his deformed body together. Again, I looked around for anything useful. I doubted the small knives and sharp sticks the human puppets brought along would do anything. My eyes landed on a woman with her throat slit and deep red blood staining her light brown hair. My vision started to go gray at the edges. For a moment I saw my dead partner's face, and I nearly lost myself in that terrible memory. This situation felt like the same one back then. Utterly hopeless, facing a monster we had no chance against. By some miracle I lived. She didn't. I saw her lifeless body, but it was never found, most likely consumed by the creature who attacked us. While I was distracted, June attacked. Before I could even blink, he was in front of me, his large clawed hand curled into a powerful blow. I raised my right arm, grabbing whatever magic I could from the ground to soften the blow. I was knocked back a few feet, the bones in my arm shattering. August appeared to move in slow motion compared to the monster before us. He dodged an attack that would have ripped out his throat, but was stuck 3 times in the stomach and chest so hard blood came from his mouth. He was knocked back, landing hard on the ground next to me. No matter how hard I tried to think of a plan, the horrible truth became crystal clear. We were fucked. I woke up to my mom talking on the phone in the living room. She's been in Japan for a week. I knew she had been in Japan for 5 days, with 4 more to go. She had called me once the day before, and today, I was certain she wouldn't be home. Not for a few more days, at least. Yet, I clearly heard her voice, distinct and clear, coming from the living room. It took me a few seconds to realize. I was still a bit groggy. Then I understood something was wrong. I got up hurriedly, my feet trembling, slowly making my way toward my bedroom door. I could hear my mom's voice through the small gap under the door. She was speaking quickly, faster than usual. I strained to listen to be sure I wasn't dreaming. It was her voice. But she was speaking in a language I didn't understand. I couldn't move. I didn't know if it was a dream or if I was losing my mind. I stayed there in the darkness of my room, listening. She spoke in this strange dialect, with something off about her pacing, faster and faster, almost like she was trying to set a speed record. I decided to go see. I opened my door just a crack and peered into a hallway, then pulled back to avoid being noticed. At the end I saw my mom. She was sitting on the couch, in the soft morning light, staring blankly into space. Her hair was messy, as if she hadn't slept in 2 days. But what struck me was that she was there, the phone pressed to her ear. Eyes glazed over and expressionless, speaking in a language I didn't know. I didn't dare make a sound. I didn't even know if she could see me. I stayed frozen, watching this surreal scene. She didn't seem to hear me. She kept talking rapidly, and the words coming out of her mouth didn't resemble a normal conversation. It was like she was reciting something at lightning speed, but in an unknown language. I froze. I didn't understand. I thought of everything but that. I wanted to talk to her, but I couldn't move. I slowly backed away from the door, as quietly as I could, and closed it behind me. I listened. She didn't stop. The minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The words kept pouring out, faster than ever, like she was trying to outpace Eminem. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't think. Every passing minute made me feel worse, but I couldn't do anything but lie there, paralyzed. Then, after about 10 minutes of keeping up the pace, she suddenly stopped. No noise, nothing. It was even stranger. I stayed there, almost holding my breath. I thought everything would return to normal. But no. Then, suddenly, she started again. But this time, it wasn't words. She was screaming. It wasn't sentences anymore, just sounds, screams, like she was pleading. Screams like I'd never heard before. It sent chills down my spine. She kept screaming, louder and louder, as if she were in some uncontrollable panic. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. I was stuck, paralyzed, caught between fear and confusion. I couldn't even breathe normally, as if the air in the house had become heavier. Then, suddenly, silence. Nothing. The phone stopped ringing. The door opened slowly, as if it had unlocked by itself. I moved closer, remaining frozen in the darkness, half hidden in the shadow of the hallway, watching the room. She was there, on the couch, motionless, eyes fixed in space. The phone was still in her hands, but she wasn't speaking anymore. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was just terrifying. There was tension in the air, as if the rest of the world had disappeared around me. The door slammed shut by itself, the loud noise pulling me out of my daze. I didn't move. I stayed there in the dim light, frozen, my eyes glued to the small space under the door where the only light came from. After what seemed like an eternity in that heavy silence, I heard her again. But this time, she was laughing. A very sudden, loud laugh, as if she had burst out laughing in the middle of a conversation. A rapid, almost compulsive laugh, but it wasn't joyful. It wasn't sincere, it was quick, as if she was forced to do it, a laugh that decomposed with every passing second. I didn't understand immediately. I didn't want to understand. I lowered my head, hiding in the darkness, hoping the noise would stop, hoping everything would return to normal. And then, it became silent again. No more noise. I didn't dare leave my room. Not yet. I was paralyzed, unable to move. The silence was oppressive. Heavy, like a blanket too thick. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly. I had no idea how long it had lasted, but it felt like an eternity. I didn't hear anything anymore. Nothing at all. Then, after what felt like half an hour, my phone vibrated. I grabbed the device, my hand shaking. The message was from my mom. The photo appeared first. She was smiling in front of the Sensoji temple, just like she always did, joyful, radiant, as if nothing had happened. Nothing could have seemed more normal than this image. But the caption froze me. Sending kisses from Japan, thinking of you a lot. I stared at the photo for a few more seconds, my eyes fixed on it, as if I were looking for a detail that wasn't there. But there was nothing strange. Nothing that would reassure me. I didn't know what to do. I felt a lump in my throat. All of this seemed impossible. Deep down, I just hoped I'd wake up and realize it had all been a horrible, far too realistic dream, but no. How, then, could I have seen my mom in the living room barely an hour ago? I stayed there, motionless, staring at the screen of my phone, unable to make a move. The photo was there, but in my head, everything felt off, as if, somehow, everything I had experienced in the last few minutes was just an illusion. I stayed frozen in my room for minutes, maybe hours, not knowing what to do. I didn't respond. I didn't say anything. I just let the fear settle in, unable to remove it, and I still have no explanation. She wasn't a nurse, Part 1. Removing my limp hand from my keyboard, I mosey it down into my front pocket, falling into place around my phone like the hands of virtuosic violinists taking command of their bow. I pick up the call before the phone even leaves my pocket. Looking down at my thigh, the phone creeps into view from behind the fabric of my jeans. The caller ID is not as expected. Blood bank. I take the phone to my cheek. Hello? I spoke like I questioned if someone was at the other end. Yes, hello, it's Michelle from the blood bank. Are you aware of how much of a difference 20 minutes of your time can do for others? As phone salesmen come, they all seem aggressively upbeat. But she was something different. She didn't really sound like a woman. She sounded feminine, but too aggressive in her sales pitch. Like someone had coerced her into having the cadence of a top salesman. It was slightly off-putting, in that same way as salesmen admittedly always are. No. Sorry, Michelle, but I am actually not that interested in blood donations. After I said it, I realized that she had set a trap for me. Her initial question was designed for me to stay on the line. Even my no was an invitation to educate me further on the possibilities of helping others. And she was at it immediately. That is no fault of yours, mister. Many people have no idea. She sounded playful. When donating blood, you are actually donating 3 separate life-saving materials. That means that only one donation could save 3 lives. That's only 20 minutes of your time. Doesn't it sound exciting to make such a big difference to so many people? It was a malicious question to end on. What could I say to that? I wouldn't capitulate to her that easily. I was figuring out how to divert without sounding selfish. Noticing my hesitation, she started again. If you are willing to become one of our lifesavers, you are in luck. Because we are actually extending a special service to people in your neighborhood. That means that if you want us to, we can come to you. Doesn't that make it convenient? Do you know what blood type you have, sir? Reacquiring my footing, I try again. No. I'm actually not really interested. Ignoring me again, she changed path. Well, that's fine, most people aren't that keen on knowing their blood type. But figuring out what blood type you have could potentially save your life. It can be vital in future emergency situations. Are you interested in the home donation service? How would that help me? I guess this was the idea. Keep me on the line until they finally posed me a piece of information I was interested in. Well, sir, if you are ever in the hospital, the doctors would be able to match your social security number to your blood type, making sure you can receive blood immediately without waiting for doctors to do testing in such a time-sensitive situation. So this donation is also a chance to help yourself. I am not much for a sales pitch, but this one worked. I could tell others I had done a good deed, and I was actually creating a safety net for myself. Besides, chicks dig men that donate, and this is by far the least time-expending option. Is that information automatically put into the system? Yes, our staff will fill it in for you. You said you could come to me? Yes. We have nurses that will travel from donor to donor during normal business hours. They are bringing their nurse to me. I guess it is more convenient. Well, any method they use to save more tax-paying lives, I guess. What time? Anywhere within normal working hours. We will schedule a route that matches our donors' preferences. I'll be home around 1 o'clock on Thursday. Even though I work from home, I wanted to give a time. It just felt like a way of taking back control over the conversation. I deserved to make them come to me when I wanted. And as much as I regret to admit it, saying 1 o'clock meant I was sure to be awake by then. Being single with a programming job made it a little too easy to sleep in late. This often forces me to code at night. I tell myself I'm a night writer, but really I think by now procrastinating has become so prevalent in my life that I am forced to schedule around it. That will fit perfectly. 1 o'clock Thursday. What's the address? Redacted. Perfect. I won't take up any more of your time, Mr. Skinner. Have a great day, Mr. Skinner. You too, miss. As I took the phone away from my ear, I was reminded of my fear of needles. I never had an easy time with foreign objects being inserted into me. I remember telling my high school girlfriend that it was a good thing I wasn't into men. I think statements like that is why she left, although she did manage to laugh them off in the beginning. I still think those same idiotic thoughts. I feel a kind of connection to my past as I laugh about it, just as she used to. I hang up the phone as the first snicker leaves my lips. Hope Michelle didn't hear that. God, I am such an awkward man. As the day creeps closer, I start feeling my skin clinging itself tighter to my tissues, tucking away my veins behind their only layer of protection. Looking at the soft skin in my elbow joint has become habitual. Eyeing down the treasonous vein puffing out my skin right at the most opportune point of attack. Looking at it forces conjurations of being penetrated. The sensation of the needle rubbing against me from within my life pipes. And then to have it remove my essence like I didn't need my blood anyway. That couldn't be safe. There is a reason why I have the amount of blood I have. Surely there is. And having it removed is unnatural, and almost surely detrimental to my health. Such invasive medicine should be outlawed. Wishing the imaginative needle gone, I start thinking about the needle tickling me from within my vein as the surgical instrument was retired from its violation of my cellular integrity. In turn, I shudder. There is little escape now, though. It's almost 1 o'clock. The nurse would be here any minute. Looking around my home, I realized that it was completely unpresentable. I had to clear out my living room at least. I started by clearing away old plates. Too many TV dinners. Some of the plates had begun sticking to each other. I put them in the kitchen and take the bin with me back to the living room. Old bags of snacks and drinks lay scattered about as well. While picking them up, I was interrupted by the doorbell ringing. I kicked the last pieces I could see under the sofa and put the trash can on the other side of the kitchen door. Closing it. The doorbell rang again as I moved towards it. Having almost forgotten all about my fear of needles for a short minute of clean panic. Sharp inhale. Long exhale. Simultaneously I depress my shoulders and door handle. Light floods in through the door, like an army of photons breaking down a castle door. Blinking, I see a silhouette come into focus. "Hello, Mr. Skinner," the voice is almost cheerful. And by the end of the sentence my vision has acclimated to the light, and I can finally see my visitor clearly. If I had to describe her appearance, I would say no more than 25, blonde, narrow nose, her forehead only reaching my shoulders, full lips, playful smile like a cat's, holding a small white cubed box with a big cartoonish drop of blood on it, her knees pointing inwards. If I had to use only one word, it would be nurse. In other words, she looked the part. "Oh hey, miss. And your name?" She looked at me for a second, her smile dropping from her face. The cheerful voice remained. "Walker. Audrey Walker. Can I come in?" Her smile returned with a vengeance. "Yes, of course." I stepped aside, letting her into my domicile. As she took the first step over the barrier of my doorstep, I felt a cold run up my back. In that moment, all I could think was, "God, she is hot. Don't fuck this up." It had been so long since I had been within arm's reach of a woman, it gave me shivers. "Do you have a comfortable place for us to sit?" The question caught my female-starved mind as very suggestive. And I stumbled, getting my footing back to the professional. I'll sit wherever you would want me to sit, at." Pathetic, she laughed. "Well, your couch seems super comfy." There was a question embedded in the suggestion. A slight change in inclination at the word couch that made it clear that I was supposed to direct her to the area. I did. She almost skipped over to it, laying her white box on the newly unburdened coffee table. She turned nimbly on the balls of her feet and bent at only her knees and hips as she sat herself gently onto my couch. I would remember where she had been seated. "Are you joining me?" Once again I felt like she was using sexual undertones for some sort of gain. But damn it if I wasn't willing to entertain her. Yes, I am." "What do you want me?" I tried to act like I had meant it as flirtatious, while in fact it was just a coincidence of my nervous brain falling into her submission. "Well, for now, Mr. Skinner, I want you right here." She patted the sofa next to her. I remembered the trash underneath it. I caught myself wishing that she wouldn't see it. I walked slowly, unsteadily. Putting one foot in front of the other felt like a puzzle to me. How do people handle these emotions? Heart throbbing, I bent over, gripping the armrest. She opened up the white box, and suddenly all of the sexual tension I had been engrossed in vanished. The light reflecting off the deflated plastic bag evaporated it like a puddle in summer. Now all I could think about was that empty canister, which would hold within it the liquid that now kept me alive. Some part of me given away to the dying masses. "You afraid of needles?" She reached out for the bag while I quivered in fright. "Not really. I lied. She lifted the bag and the attached tubes out of their container. Don't worry, I'll be gentle with you. She smiled at me. Once again I thought of her tone as suggestive. But it didn't matter. Nor did it matter how gentle she was actually able to be with me. The blood would be drained from me regardless. Laying the bag on my table. She then took a small vial out from her pocket. Can I get you to verify your information for me? She said while looking intently at the small vial. Yes, of course, it's redacted, yes, and you grew up in? Redacted, perfect. That's the worst part. Over her smile was getting annoying. Or I was getting angry. I needed her to know how I felt, without seeming less masculine. An impossible task. How much blood are you taking? An authoritative question. I think I solved that nicely. It's only 0.85 liters, plus the 20 milliliters for the blood test. I didn't know how much that was of my total, or if it was standard to take that much. Or that little? Oh, that's just fine. Damn, I was back on the defensive. She was taking the alcohol swab and the small needle with the three-necked nozzle. I could already feel my nervous sweat erupting from my skin like molten lava. The evaporation of the droplets quickly turning my perfectly adequate body temperature into shivering cold. Taking a small adjustable ribbon, she slid it up my arm. Her nails stroking my skin every inch along its journey to my bicep. Retracting her hand, she ripped the packaging of the alcohol swab, revealing the small white fabric solely responsible for maintaining my genomic integrity against the microbial assailants lurking on my skin. She leaned in and grabbed my forearm. Her hands were soft. I closed my eyes as soon as our skin contacted. It was involuntary. A cold wetness fell on my skin as I once again opened my eyes. She was fully focused on that one treasonous vein of mine. Packing away the alcohol swab, she quickly brought the needle to the vein. I didn't know if it would be best to look or not. You are going to feel a little sting. Her gaze fixed to my vein, not a moment of compassion for my situation. Can you count down? She looked at me with surprise. Sure. Smile returned. Her gaze returned to the vein. I had to figure out if I was going to look or not. 3. If I looked, I wouldn't be surprised by the sensations that would follow. 2. If I looked, I would watch as my body became scarred, and blood became scarcer. 1. If I didn't look, I could focus on something else. I might not feel as much of it. I blinked, and kept my eyes closed. I felt an exponentially rising pressure on my skin. Then my cartilage gave in. It collapsed with a snap as the needle broke through my armor. When it settled within me, the vein bounced back up like a spring enclosing the foreign object. As it scraped upon the needle, I felt my toes cringe. I let out a small puff of air, and opened my eyes. She put the tube of the bag into the nozzle and turned a hinge. The blood poured into it. Keep on working this hand gently, she said and tapped my palm. I was losing consciousness, watching the liquid streaming out. She couldn't take this away from me. I spent all my energy remaining upright, controlling my breathing. Not because it helps against panic, or whatever, but because I didn't want to be visibly flustered. In, out, in, out, in. When I awoke, it was to gentle laughter and a stroke on my arm. Hey, mister. I liked this smile even less. It was belittling. Degrading. How dared she look at me like that? I think you dozed off there for a minute. Hi. Fuck her. What had she been doing in the meantime? Had she been going through my stuff? Good news is that we are done. So I hope I'll get to see you again. It's really very kind-hearted of you to donate and save lives. She grasped my forearm with her hand. A small ball of cotton was secured to my joint with tape. Out of my peripheral, red caught my eye. I was looking at the bag full of what was collected from me. I was trying to estimate the amount of it, thinking about how it would look if instead it were to be spread out over my floor. Silently comparing that with the amount of blood I had seen in horror movies. And if the character survived or not. She left. I felt at home again. The sun was still shining. I threw out the trash under the couch and updated my dating profile. She wasn't a nurse. Part 2. Weeks later, I went to visit my parents. They lived at the other side of the country. I chose to drive. It's very scenic, and I love the freedom it gives me. While driving, I thought of the blood donation and how it hadn't made big improvements to my dating life. More matches, but no dates. So it was definitely staying in the bio. But I was looking forward to trying my luck somewhere else in the country. Now I was going out of town anyway. How were the pictures of my abs not getting me more attention? My bio was also great. I had even found a natural way to sneak in how much money I was making. Who were the guys taking all my likes, cursing at the unfairness at display? I returned my focus to the driving. The forests along the road were stunning. Driving through the mountainside made me smile. I thought about having a girl I could go for hikes with. That was the dream. Finding someone outdoorsy. I imagined walking uphill behind her, looking at the vast expanses of trees and hills. I became rather blissful. Then another thought struck me. There must be very few gas stations out here. Looking at my dashboard, I mumbled to myself, better safe than sorry. I turned off the radio and committed myself to finding the next gas station. Taking my phone out from my pocket, I put it up in front of my face. I used voice commands to find the GPS. I wasn't getting into a wreck. That's for damn sure. Once the application opened, I put on my most robotic voice. Gas station. It repeated the sentiment back to me, in a pleasingly submissive tone, assuring me it would find one close to me. A small line popped up on the screen. Start trip, I commanded. The screen zoomed in on the small arrow representing my car, and I put my phone in its holder. Once again able to enjoy the scenery. Pulling into the gas station, I chose the pump closest to the main building. I wasn't halfway yet, and I was already feeling dehydrated. The pump was self-service, and for a moment I thought about avoiding the social interaction required to get a drink here. But as the tank was filling up, I had a moment of quiet, and was forced to become aware of my body's needs. I chose to listen. I packed up and paid at the pump, turning towards the building. Walking into the gas station, I made quick eye contact with the cashier. Her eyes immediately flew off in some other direction. In retaliation, I did the same. Walking to the fridges, I cursed why all women had to be that same way. I picked a drink that advertised itself as full of vitamins, and shut the fridge door. The fluorescent lights were tinting every product in the store, even if any of it had been good quality. In here, everything seemed like the bottom of the barrel. Even the floor seemed off. Maybe the lights were only here to mask how many teenagers had thrown up in the aisles. The acidic Thai food forever staining the interior and dooming the store to use air fresheners to mask the smell. I put my drink down at the counter and went in my pockets to retrieve my credit card. Oh, it is you. I raised my head and met her gaze. Sorry, I knew I recognized you when you walked in. How are you? She picked up the drink and scanned it. I'm fine, thank you. She looked at its label. Of course you're a health nut, she quipped, and re-established eye contact with me. I think my confusion was mistaken for something else, because she immediately dropped the smile from her face. Sorry. I didn't, it was only stereotypical, you know. She put back the drink on the counter. No, it's fine. I laid my card on the chip reader. You just assume that nurses do what's best for them. Now my confusion was total. The machine bibbed. See you again next time. Her smile returned. I picked up my drink. Yeah? Good day. I turned and hurried for the exit. Who did she think I was? Getting into my car, I put the bottle in a holder and turned on the engine. Did I know her? I looked out the windshield into the gas station through the cheap one-pane glass. I shook my head and pulled out from the gas station, laying both it and the weird interaction behind me. Much later, I arrived at my parents' place. I parked on the empty road in front of their house. Collecting my things, I reached for the now empty bottle, reminding me of the interaction. I took it with me as I left the car. Walking up to my parents' front door, a natural feeling of maturity hit me. I imagine childhood homes have that kind of effect on everyone, reminding us how much we have grown. I rung the doorbell. I could hear the chime through the door. I could hear my mother's voice from inside. I turned and looked out over the front garden. It's so weird to me how people chose to have fruiting trees right next to the road, enticing strangers and no doubt inviting trouble onto your doorstep. I hear the door behind me. My father stands in the doorway, his reading glasses halfway down his nose, newspaper still in hand. If it isn't the man of the hour. His wide mouth couldn't hold back a smile. I was never sure if he found himself funny or important. Hey Dad, what's for dinner? He stepped aside, letting me come in. asked your mother? He turned away from the door and closed the door behind you, he said while walking back towards the living room. I did. After putting down my bag, I then untied my shoes and took the empty bottle with me to the kitchen. Hello, honey. My mom was talking to me before I even turned into the kitchen. I swear the woman possesses omnipotence. Hi, Mom. I went to the sink to throw out the bottle. Oh, honey, we got a new bin. It's over by the patio door. She gestured with hands caked in some sort of dough. I'm so glad to see you. She used the opportunity to deliver a sincere message with eye contact. Something she knew I wasn't that comfortable with. How was your trip? I walked towards the patio, passing the door connecting kitchen and living room. It was long. I had to stop for some refreshments along the way. I shook the empty bottle. She moved her head back to the food as I passed directly behind her. My father had once again returned to his recliner, where he found comfort behind his newspaper. Did you eat as well? The question had a slightly mechanical sound to it, like she was gauging the betrayal of her cooking abilities. No, just staving of the dehydration. I reached the metal monstrosity. It looked like something out of a warehouse. Stepping on the foot pedal, I could see all the packaging from the food Mom was preparing. I threw in the bottle. What's for dinner? Oh, just a bunch of greens and a little bit of chicken. If I know you right, you aren't eating as healthy as I would like you to. She turned her head back towards me, a warm smile hiding motherly concern. People say I'm a health nut. I smiled at her. H.A. Dad chimed in from the living room. Who's saying that? Matter of fact, the cashier from the gas station actually told me that today. I replied authoritatively. Like she had been one of many. How would she know? He put down the newspaper and looked into the kitchen at me and Mom. She knew me from somewhere. I simplified. Evidently unsatisfactory justification for both of them. Well, where did she know you from? The classic intrigue Mom always had when I mentioned women. I'm not sure. She was probably only saying it to get at some of your money, son. Dad harangued. Well, you should have asked her. Then the mystery would have been solved already. Mom ignored him. I just thought it was a bit awkward. You should go back there. Maybe she's sweet. What would he do with a girl working gas stations? Well, what were you doing with a bartender? She turned to him with a death glare. That was different. He muttered, lifting his newspaper back up and disengaging from the conversation. How would I even know if she's working? Well, if she's around your age, she's probably working nights. Those are the most well-paying hours, and they're often open schedules in the roster. She had a small pause. Maybe she's saving up for a trip or something explorative. She winked at me. I joined Dad in the living room, contemplating the idea. As the food was brought and formed the kitchen, me and Dad went to sit at the diner table. He was at the food before Mom was even seated. So these are sweet potatoes with edamame beans. I've had the broccoli steamed before they joined the potatoes in the sauce. I dozed of listening to the description of the food. She had placed herself behind Dad, whom had stopped halfway through filling his plate, her hands on his shoulders. She always insisted on presenting the meal, even though everyone was hungry. I don't know if Dad put up with this every day. Who wants to say grace? She let go of his shoulders and went to her seat. Do we have two? I asked. It's tradition, son. Dad had put his elbows on the table and Mom took her seat with hands already reaching out for ours. We locked hands, and she used her legs to push her chair closer to the table. Me and Father met eyes before touching each other. The hand going to my mother was soft and inviting. The one to my father rough and strong. Mom said grace, and we dug into the food. What have you been up to? We never hear anything from our busy man. Work's been demanding, with all the data breaches and whatnot. Keeping out the masses, locking everything tight and making sure nothing's stolen. Good job, lad. Dad interjected. I hope you aren't working yourself too hard. Remember to take some breaks. It was a rhetorical question. Speaking of, what else have you been up to? She took a bite of her food, leaving the air between us silent. I scoured my brain for something that wasn't TV or video games. I thought of the mess I had cleaned up weeks ago when donating blood. I've become a blood donor. Oh, my little boy. Always helping others. Don't make him out to be some wuss woman. I did not. She turned her attention to the man she married. Actually, you could learn a thing or two from him. When did you last do something selfless? I don't have to. Simple as that. He continued eating. Stoic. I thought you were afraid of stuff like that. She ignored him. Returning to me. No, Mom. Well, think you know a fella. How come you suddenly started doing that? I thought of the salesman. I saw an advertisement. Something about knowing your blood type and how much time it could save for surgeons working on you. If you're afraid of getting into accidents, you can always get some driving lessons from your old man. He quipped, laughing at his own joke. Donating doesn't sound like such a bad choice now, huh, Dad? Reacquiring his approval, we smiled at each other. I thought trauma surgeons always used universal blood. Mom's questions left a silence in the air. I changed the subject and we finished eating. As Mom brought out the plates, Dad returned to his recliner and I went to my old room. There are some linens on the bed. I thought you might want to do them yourself. Thanks, Mom. See you guys tomorrow. The food had made my system shut down completely. It must have been woefully ill-equipped to deal with so many fresh ingredients. Making the bed, I thought about how often I slept alone. And how lonely I felt doing it. How could such a necessary activity feel so shameful? I had many times wondered if people asked, "Did you sleep well?" Just to taunt me with the lack of women in my life. Laying down in that room, I thought of my high school girlfriend. And how we never ended up doing anything. I thought of my mother's endorsement of the gas station girl. Maybe she was an outdoorsy type, like she had suggested. Tomorrow I would drive by the same station on my way home.